Our first topic this week, we're going to be returning to the topic of copy protection and kind of stop and anti-cheat software and their purpose or lack thereof, depending on who you talk to when it comes to the game industry. So there's two pieces of news that kind of sparked this. So the first one is, Rob, you were telling me about this earlier. Let me pull this up here on Gamasutra. So, Valve's anti-cheat software reportedly banned over 90,000 accounts on Steam this week. According to the piece, it's a precisely 92,374. And this was in any title that has their own anti-cheat software. So, Dota, Counter-Strike, Team Fortress, apparently Dying Light and Rust has it as well. And this is, of course, has caused, whenever we talk about this, it always gets people's, light of fire under them in terms of software banning or restricting people from playing a game. And, of course, the other piece of news was that Sonic Mania got its copy protection changed. Of course, Sonic Mania being the fan-made but endorsed game that has earned a lot of goodwill for kind of being like the first really great Sonic game in a long time. But it did come with, I believe, Denuvo copy protection. Yeah, it has Denuvo anti-tamper. And we've talked about Denuvo on several podcasts in the past. And let me see. And of course, with them changing it or trying to remove it has caused more issues. And of course, there are people saying we're not buying the game until you remove it. So it's definitely an interesting week for copy protection software and trying to restrict those kinds of issues from happening. So, Rob, since you've done producing in the past as well as working with 2K, what are your thoughts on copy protection and its use in video games?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a definitive reason for using that's not just about the money. It's about keeping players happy. And I know whenever Steam does something like cancels accounts, it's one of those things where like, oh, that horrible evil monster Steam is just deleting accounts willy-nilly. What happens if you're a real person and your account gets deleted? Because their account banning is very severe. If you get banned, apparently it is just you're no going back. You're gone. Your games are gone. Yeah. So if you have a lot of games, you've just lost possibly thousands and thousands of dollars worth of game investment. So it's really easy to hate on that, and like super easy because Steam is an easy target. But at the same time, they're pruning. It is supremely easy to create a Steam account. Like you can create a dozen in a day, and you can put them all on the same email address. Like you can have one email address that spans thousands of accounts. I've actually had to do that for work. Mass create a whole bunch of accounts with Steam's help. They'll do that for you. So like pruning a bunch of accounts shouldn't be that big of a deal. 90,000 is probably a drop in the bucket compared to what actually exists. So if they're sure about it, I mean, what are you going to do? You could get mad and just assume that they're doing it wrong, but at the same time, until there are stories out there of people going, they just deleted my account and I have I like a screenshot of their account like the day before, 10,000 games, a screenshot after one who's buying 10,000 games. That's ridiculous. But it's weird. And then for what you said about Sonic, that seems to become a little bit more of a hitting close to home thing since, I don't know, like the cheat software, it can get things wrong, and has famously done so in the past. I'll let you speak more to the Sonic thing since I'm not as familiar with that.
Yeah, and as you were saying, Rob, like for another thing I think that really hurts when we see these bans is that most of the time, the people who do get banned, we do later find out that they were hacking or cheating or pirates. Like, we've seen famous examples, such as when we were playing Serious Sam, and how there's that the anti-cheat software there will spawn an unkillable like pink scorpion monster, and you'll see people on Steam going, "I hate this game because there's this pink monster just shows up and kills me, and the developers won't do anything about it." And they say, "Yeah, that's anti-cheat software. You're stealing the game." No, I'm not. I'm not stealing it. Yeah, you are. It only shows up in pirate copies. It's like it's very hard. That's when we play the world's tiniest violin for those people.
Yeah.
But when we talk about stuff like Denuvo and copy protection software like that, it's a very tough topic because, as we've said before, copy protection software is not designed to prevent a game from being uncrackable or incrackable. There's no such thing. Right. We've said this on our last time we talked about Denuvo. We mentioned that they said that, oh, this will keep the game protected for like 2 to 3 months, and then it was found like 2 days later somebody cracked it in like 5 days.
Yeah.
The main purpose of copy protection is to keep the game, uncrackable during the peak selling period. Again, like it's like 30 to 60 days these days.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that argument as to, why should a game that's like 5-6 years old still have copy protection on it? And I think that's one of the big issues. And I don't know if you've had too much experience with this end or the people you work with at 2K, but like, what are your thoughts on copy protection that's way past the game's initial shelf life?
Oh, I'm just like you. I'm kind. I'm a guess. It seems like a waste of resources, and to me, that's what when a business should be like. Okay, well, this is clearly not working out for us money wise. Mm-hmm. At first, it seems like whatever. I don't know how long it actually takes to crack a game. I think 2 minutes. When it's released, something along those lines is super fast. People figure this stuff out so quickly. And then, in terms of the cheating thing, yeah, that's where I have a little bit of experience at 2K, because in like NBA 2K, that series, you get tons of online, haters and cheaters and just everything you can imagine. People constantly cheesing or rage quitting and that kind of thing, and that disrupts the experience. So you can understand when people get banned. There are temporary bans and there are ban lifts and that kind of thing. I also dealt with it in the gambling area of things, and the laws there are very strict. If you like a permaban, they can't ever come back. So like if someone gets permaban from a gambling thing, they are not allowed to come back ever, and it's very hard to, because you have to prove who you are to even sign up in the first place. But for a game to hack one, I go back to the 90s in high school. When you remember those little dials that you would have to like line up, and like we would just rip them apart, copy on 2 pieces of paper and reconstruct. Like it took 20 cents to do that. And in instruction manuals back then, when such things existed, turn to page 17. What is the fourth word in the third paragraph? Like all you need to do is copy that and distribute it. It's super easy to get around pirating or that kind of thing, and I understand why companies want to prevent it, but I want to know how they calculate it. I want to know how they calculate the lost revenue from such a thing, because it can't be cheap to get the copy protection written. It's got to take engineers who cost 6 figures a year to make, or maybe you're going to like a third world country to get your development there, in which case you just gave the pirates the game. You just lost it right there. So yeah, I don't know. Is there a cost benefit there? I have never been able to figure that out. I don't think anyone's ever said for sure that there is a cost benefit, and I think that's what it comes down to in a AAA studio. Is this saving me? Is this making me money in the long run? And yeah, when you're 6 years out, I don't see how.
Yeah. And 2 really good points there. One about the cost and the benefit, and Gordo said in chat about Denuvo is known for impacting performance too. That's another big thing about when people look at any kind of anti-cheat or copy protection software, is that it has been known to cause issues. And again, we've talked about this one before, but back in the old days, Secure ROM, Star Force, Like, these are some very nasty examples of copy protection. And I mean, I talked about this with a Far Cry 4. Oh wait, was it Far Cry? No, Far Cry 3. When I installed it, it forcibly installed Punkbuster on my computer. I didn't ask for it, and I had to remove that. Games for Windows Live, exactly. But like, when you start, this is, I think, when a lot of gamers don't really care anymore about the developer, because when you're impacting their ability to play your game, it doesn't matter, how much money you're trying to save. You are killing the goodwill of your title. The Games for Windows Live example reminds me of Warhammer Dawn of War 2, which you had to install it on Steam. You also need Games for Windows Live running at the same time, and then you need the game running all at the same time to try and get that to play. Of course, that caused who knows what kind of issues with two different softwares trying to run the game at the same time.
Yeah, eating up system resources. It seems like, I mean, that just seems ridiculous, because then you're getting into like really hardcore programming, like like software creation to do that. And so many games went unplayable when it shut down. Yeah. The effort involved not only in making the software, but then debugging it with regards to whatever game that software is on. I mean, in the long run, that just can't be cost efficient. Like, it's hard for me to imagine. Now I know, this is a topic that spreads not only from the AAA side, but all the way to the indie developer side. We've talked about it many times, is those Steam key pirate places. And the impact there, it feels like it's significant, but I don't know how you prove it. I know there's probably someone out there, much smarter than we are, who's got this algorithm, who's like, well, you're going to lose 10% of sales if you have this pirated, and that'll equate to however much money you're expecting to earn. So I don't know. This is something well beyond my actual knowledge of, and so I'm just kind of guessing.
Yeah, and of course mine as well. And again, going back to what we were saying regarding the costs and the benefits of it, this is another big point. As you said, Rob, it costs a lot of money to get this stuff. I'm sure, top of the line copy protection is not cheap to develop. But at the same breath, though, how much money are you really losing through piracy? And this is the nail in the coffin, or the major point whenever we talk about copy protection. And we'll get back to anti-cheating software in a minute. But the problem with this discussion is that you'll hear this from developers and publishers saying, we need this because, our game is we're losing millions of dollars due to piracy. But the question is just, how much are you really losing? And more importantly, how much are you losing because you have that software on to begin with? Because we've heard examples of consumers saying, I can't play your game because you have this on there. I'm just going to get the pirate copy so I can play it. And when it comes to this kind of argument, we've said this before, but there are people who are going to pirate your game no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter if your game is $2 or $200. If there is a pirated copy available on some site, which I'm not going to mention for obvious reasons, they're going to do it. They were never your customer to begin with. And it's very hard to sometimes just know what your market is. Because you'll have that case where if your game sold 50,000 copies, you have to wonder, how many people pirated my game? Or the other way around, if I had software on there, how many more people would have bought it or played it if I didn't have it?
Right. Yeah, I don't know how you figure that out.
I mean, I remember hanging out with a few indie developers 5-6 years ago, and they're like, I don't care about people buying my game, I just want people to play it. And this is the other big point about copy protection, is that you'll have developers who, and this goes back to what we were saying before about the artist versus the businessman, people who don't care about making money. And again, it's that very diverse push and pull when it comes to these games. Yes, you don't want to piss off your consumer, but at the same time, you need something in place to protect yourself. Because we've seen cases, and well, again, there's so many out there of, people who allow you to buy games from their site, but they don't have any store protection. So someone may just use, pirate a stolen credit card, buy all kinds of keys from your game, and then you get left with the bill. Or you have no protection in place. Someone will buy your game and then they'll just print out, how many hundreds of copies or thousands, and then nobody will buy your game. I mean, we've even seen cases lately of developers having their game cloned or stolen before the game is even released, and you are finding it on a pirated site. So there's gotta be some protection in place. But going back to Ogoro's point, like, at what point are you just hurting your consumers as opposed to protecting your game?
Yeah, and I know there's got to be a big part that's like a bit of a pride thing when you find out that the pirated copies are actually making somebody else money who did no work on it at all. And that part that hurts. It's like, well, I'm hardly making any money, and I spent years on this thing, and this joker over here stole it and is selling it for pennies on the dollar, but making 100% profit. Yep. So, like, that hurts in a lot of ways, and given all the blood, sweat, and tears you put into it, that I can't imagine how that actually feels. When you find out people are just kind of using your talents and skills to make money on the side for themselves, that sucks. But yeah, there's that line. I don't know where it is. It's so damn blurry. But yeah, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you've looked on like Facebook groups or indie threads and stuff, there are developers out there who are obsessed with making sure their game, with copyright protection issues like that. And I mean, there's even been a few cases of developers being called out for allowing for their game, monitoring your computer or monitoring your software because they don't want people to pirate their game. But again, at that point, it's kind of like, it's that old adage from Nietzsche: when fighting monsters, beware lest you become a monster yourself. That in your attempt to fix piracy, you're making your game so horrible or so toxic to play that you're going to drive people to pirate your game to begin with.
Yeah, but then it brings up that question again of what you just brought up, which is how many copies were you going to sell? And I feel like there's that soul-searching component. Like, yeah, there's this pirate who's out there selling your game for like 50 cents and making money off of it. But were those people ever going to find your game other than a pirate site? As far as they know, the game isn't even being produced. Like, if it came out on like pirated before it ever came out in the real life or whatever, it's hard to say. Like, I don't know how many of those people were actually going to be your customer for the SRP or whatever of your game. Like, I feel like that pride part, then that's just an emotive aspect for you to come and and think about, well, was anyone going to buy my game? Like, I don't know how you deal with that. I mean, I've worked on a game that sold nothing, like almost literally nothing, and you just have to you can say, oh well, what if this, what if that, but at the end of the day, like, enough people saw that your game existed to buy it or not buy it, and most people chose not to, and you've just got to live with it.
Yep. And like you just said, like, I know we've spoken about this topic many times over, a lot of that has to do with marketing your game and understanding how that works. So as you said, as we've said this many times here, most, especially from the independent scene, if you're expecting your brand new game that no one's ever heard of to make like 300,000 copies or sold, that's just not going to happen. We've seen developers, with legitimate or with exhaustive backgrounds and credit, like Jake Burgett, Alexis Kennedy, and so on and so forth, their games are selling like 50 to 100,000 copies. And they are recognized at this point. It's not like they're a no-name developer making their first game. And as you said, it can hurt that you just spend the last year to 2 years of your life working on your dream project, and you find out maybe only 3,000 other people in the world actually want to play it. And again, it comes down to, wait, is it just 3,000 because that's all there is? But what if I did more marketing? But what if they were just pirating my game? Maybe I should do copy protection. And all those what ifs can easily drown your self-confidence.
Yeah, this brings up a point that I don't know if you're familiar with Riff Tracks, the
Hmm.
website. They they had like a thing on their website that the creator Mike Nelson, he basically says, if you came about this copy for free or via a pirated site, hey, it's the internet, it happens, but you can make it right by coming to our site and donating a couple bucks. This is it's not free for us to do this.
Hmm.
So something like that, leading to the customer or whatever,
Hmm.
that you are in fact you are trying to sell this game and make money off of it and make a living, and that's the only way you can make more content if indeed you
Hmm.
like the content.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a reasonable approach. There's a lot of little things you can do without going out and spending money on software that's not going to do you any good.
Yeah. And as Alberto said in chat about people who use pirated games as demos,
Hmm.
that's another big point about people just being able to get access to these games in the first place. And there's also cases, as we've talked about before, with the the conversion rate being very horrible in some countries, where they'll have to spend like 4 to 5 times the MSRP to play a game just because of tariffs, or just simply due to how the conversion works.
Hmm.
And that gets into a very sticky situation when people literally can't even play your game because of pricing or copy protection. Because at that point, what are you supposed to do? And going back to a point earlier about people not being able to play games anymore, I know why do I always forget their name? Not the ESA, the EFA, I think, had an argument about making it illegal to use pirated copies if the original game is no longer available, or if you can't get a server up.
Hmm.
And again, that goes into another major topic there about what happens when these games aren't available to be played anymore, and your only option is the pirated copy. What are you supposed to do then?
Yeah, cough cough maim. you
Mm-hmm.
know Real quick, El Gordo, are you able to post whatever, like the article that talks about that,
Mm-hmm.
the sale for a machinarium? That sounds interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take a look.
Yeah. And let me check our time here for this topic. We're about 40 minutes in, so we'll probably move on to our second one in a few minutes. But to bring this back to anti-cheat software, that is another big point about for games, as we mentioned earlier, with Counter-Strike Go, Rust, Team Fortress, and even stuff like what Blizzard does. And this is where we get very interesting, because while when copy protection software is looked at favorably, a lot of people are in support of anti-cheat software, especially for competitive-based games.
Hmm.
For Payday 2, for instance, they don't, or for the longest time, I don't know if they ever added it, they had no anti-cheat software. So you had people who could hack the hell out of that game. I remember joining a lobby where all of a sudden the game starts and the match is over. Like, they automatically won, huh? Oh, my voice is starting to go there. But like, they had, so like, you could earn every achievement in Payday 2 in 20 seconds. And again, people were arguing that we need that software on there, but then they were saying, like, the defenders were saying, well, it's just a single player co-op game. Why should you have that software? And it gets very tricky when you have those situations. Like, for me, I think that you should respect developers' wishes. Like, I'm not a fan of people who hack games, especially if there's any kind of multiplayer component. But the same could be also said that you're not really hurting anybody, in the grand scheme of things. But it's a very tricky case. Like, what do you think?
It is a very tricky case. There's the one thing I feel like is kind of obvious, but at the same time, maybe there's a huge problem with it, and that I'm just completely blind to. Now, I imagine that that's the case, and that is crowdsourced, cheat protection, which is to say, you're playing with someone and you're like, dude, that guy's cheating, and enough
Mm-hmm.
votes for that person is like, well, then they're banned for a month or whatever. Um, that it seems like that's the cheapest way to be pretty accurate, in finding cheaters and punishing them, because yeah, the people who don't want to be cheated are the people playing the game with those guys.
Yep.
And there's always the chance that maybe this person is really legitimately super amazing at the
Mm-hmm.
game, but at the same time, they can find that out. Enough people vote for that person, they can look into it. Um, but yeah, I feel like crowdsource is probably the easiest and cheapest, the least expensive, both monetarily and time wise, way to go.
Mm-hmm.
To find people who the community uh, does not think is on the level.
Yeah. Like, I remember, I think I got called out once in Left 4 Dead. People were accusing me of hacking the game because I was too good at it. But yeah, you need something, I think. And I guess here's a question. I think I know the answer already, but do you think that some kind of anti-tamper or anti-cheat software should be standard for multiplayer games these days?
If you want to be serious about the multiplayer, then yeah. But if it's just a game that's totally for fun,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe not. Or if you're a very small studio, but like if you're legitimately trying to be an esport, you got to do something. Like there's two or excuse me, or there's money involved somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dota or League of Legends or Rocket League or even the NBA 2K. Not even talking about the new league, just that. I mean, there's millions, tens of millions of people playing competitively, in their on their own right, and they're trying to rise in the ranks, and they're trying to like grind. And then there's these other people, and you feel like they're cheating and not really grinding. They're just like pressing a button, leaving the system, coming back, and they have virtual currency. So it's hard to say. I
Yeah.
mean, actually, it's not hard to say. You gotta have it at a certain level, but how you go about implementing it is up to them.
Yep. And we are seeing more cases. This could probably be our final part for this section, but we're also seeing cases of developers doing more with policing toxicity using their own software. Of course, the most famous example would be League of Legends and their whole tribunal system and trying to walk things back from being called, like one of the most toxic fan bases of all time. And again, this is where things get very tricky. And I think this is where we'll probably wrap it up for this section. But the whole idea of somebody somewhere monitoring what you're doing in a video game, be it your behavior or hacking or stuff like that, this is where we get to that very sticky case of ethics. Of, is it okay for, if I'm cursing in a video game, is it okay for someone to report me and get my account banned? Now, of course, the obvious response to that is, if it's in the end user agreement that if you can't be a jerk online. But again, it's a very weird discussion. For instance, there was a case like 2 months ago or 3 months ago for somebody trying to do this whole thing with bully hunters. That they would, come into your game if someone was being mean to you, and they would try and stop it. And the whole thing was just, a circus from day one. But there's people out there who do feel like if you're mean to someone, if you're being aggressive, that you should be banned or hunted down. And again, it's a very weird world we live in these days with topics like this.
Yeah, it is, and that might be a thing we do for a topic,
Mm-hmm.
in unto itself in the coming weeks or something. But yeah, that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm. And it's one that, again, like we were just talking about this beforehand. Oh man, this is a tangent in waiting to happen. But the whole issue with James Gunn being fired from Guardians of the Galaxy because someone dug up tweets from him from 8 years ago, making racy and disgusting jokes. But it's that case of should someone be banned, or like how do you police tone, or police like someone's actions for anything like that? But again, that is a topic. That's another 30-40 minute discussion that we get into right now.
Yeah.